The night the mansion went silent, I realized money makes a louder kind of quiet. It was the kind of hush that swallows a house whole. No humming Sub-Zero, no distant laughter from the bonus room, no rhythmic click of Evan's dress shoes pacing the marble. Just the breath of my 2 sleeping children, and the buzz in my ears from a truth I couldn't yet name. Moments earlier, on the long, glinting kitchen island, I'd found his final gift to me, a single embossed envelope with my name, Grace, in his precise, architectural handwriting. Inside, a line so sharp it cut the air in half. "I'm leaving. Don't call." It wasn't a note. It was a verdict. Attached was a photocopy stamped with the words I didn't understand until my stomach dropped through the earth. Post-nuptial agreement executed. I thought of vows, 2 babies, anniversaries with glittering guests and speeches about forever, and how paper, cheap and indifferent, could amputate a life with a staple and a signature. Evan always said contracts were a love language. He just never said for whom. I walked down the hall past framed magazine covers, the ones that crowned him Cleveland's boldest builder, and wondered what they'd call me tomorrow. The wife who served canapes and disappeared in the background of gala photos. The woman who happily dressed the same 2 kids every morning because it was the only thing that made time feel steady. Socks, then shoes, then one small hand in the other as we watched the city wake up across the Cuyahoga. I made it to the primary closet, a boutique more than a room, and stared at the empty stretch of walnut where his suit jackets used to hang in gradient perfection, lapels like dark waves. A faint scent of cedar and his expensive cologne lingered like a prank. My phone vibrated. A text from the nanny we loved. "I'm so sorry, Grace." He told me not to come back. Betrayal didn't explode. It seeped. Through policies, through paychecks, through people you trusted to show up at 7:30 a.m. I went to my son's room. Theo's little mouth was open in a crescent, the soft snore of a 4-year-old who believed bedtime stories were laws. In the next room, my 7-year-old, Ella, had fallen asleep with her library book tented over her chest, as if the chapter could hold the ceiling up. I tucked the blanket under her chin the way my mother used to do for me in Toledo before life turned into the long drive that brought me here. Evan said I was sentimental. Maybe, but sentiment had hands. It fed, it held, it noticed when little feet grew bigger. Money had rules. It judged from far away. Downstairs, the island was a stage with props neatly arranged by a man who curated my life like a museum. The envelope, a monogrammed key fob turned face down, my wedding ring placed dead center in the glare of a pendant lamp. I picked up the ring. It felt like a sentence with no verb. The silence was so complete, I imagined I could hear the headline writing itself. Millionaire developer. Evan Hartley announces new venture. Not the venture of running away, of course, but that's how men like him rewrote gravity. There were messages from an unknown number. I opened one. A digital bank dashboard. Zeros where our savings should have been. Red text. Transfer completed. Another message. Mortgage auto pay. Canceled. The screen blurred. A woman who works at a grocery store might know exactly how much is in her checking account. I, who had scheduled dentist appointments and threaded cheer bows and planned birthday cupcakes, did not. Evan had trained me to trust systems and signatures. He'd also trained me not to ask too many questions. A car door outside. Headlights slid across the foyer like a blade. For one wild second, I hoped he'd be walking back in, bleary with regret. Instead, a courier set a packet on the mat. Thick, legal, rubber-banded. The door whispered shut. Somewhere in those pages was a sentence that cut deeper than the note upstairs. You and the children will receive nothing. Not in those exact words. Lawyers avoid poetry. But that was the gist. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call every friend we'd ever toasted with and say, "Can you hear me now?" But secrets travel faster than screams, and I had a feeling our friends already knew something I didn't. That's how money makes a louder kind of quiet. It builds a room where the truth cannot echo back. The oven clock blinked 2:14 a.m. I slid down the cabinet to the cold floor, knees to chest, a posture I hadn't taken since sophomore year when life had knocked the wind out of me the first time. I pressed my palm over my heart, counted 5 breaths, stood up, and poured the last of the milk into a sippy cup, because at dawn, Theo would ask for the white juice, and when your life explodes, you still measure out breakfast. I took the ring, put it in my robe pocket, and turned off the pendant lights one by one until the island disappeared. That's when I heard a soft ping. One more message, this time from a contact I didn't recognize, a name that would tilt my world on its axis. And right then, when the mansion held its breath and I held mine, I learned that the note, the transfer, and the silence weren't the end of something. They were the start of a maze designed to make me lose. But I was about to become a woman who brought a map. And if you think a torn contract and an empty account were the worst of it, you should know. The worst was yet to come. My name is Grace Miller, and if you've ever judged a stranger in the cereal aisle for buying the off-brand anything, promise me one thing before we go any further. Don't. What looks like a choice might be a battle no one else can see. I want to tell you what happened after the night the mansion went quiet, how a woman like me, soft-spoken, detail-oriented, the kind who reminds you to hydrate and brings extra Band-Aids to the field trip, learned to roar. I want to say it like a confession, because shame grows in the shadows, and for a long time I lived in a house where shadows were part of the design. We lived in Lakewood, just west of downtown Cleveland, in a lakefront property that Evan had renovated into a box of light, glass walls, riverstone fireplace, a lawn so manicured it made you whisper. He liked to talk about clean lines and durable materials, the way some men talk about sports or God. He wore achievement like a tailored coat, never wrinkled, never off the rack. At charity balls, the donors would hover close, starstruck, while I kept a mental checklist of babysitter overtime and morning lunches, and whether Theo's favorite dinosaur shirt was clean. In photos, we looked like platinum. In truth, I was nickel-plated, polished, useful, invisible. We met when I was 26 and working in a small marketing firm downtown. He was already Evan Hartley, a brand you could Google, hands in pockets as if pockets owed him rent. I fell for the version everyone falls for. Decisive, generous, a man who ordered for the table and actually remembered what you liked. He was kind to waiters. He tipped big. He stopped by my mother's nursing home with fresh flowers after my first visit left me crying in my car. He saw the entry points to a person and converted them into love. That was his genius. That was also my trap. I had Ella, then Theo. We married in a courthouse ceremony he called minimalist, and I called too fast. But I told myself speed was a love language too. After Ella was born, I left my job. The plan was to return. Plans, like glass, look strongest right before they shatter. The post-nup appeared after Theo came early and spent 2 weeks in the NICU. I was milk, exhaustion, gratitude, and fear. Evan brought the document in a leather folder and said it was routine, a shield for both of us. Nothing will ever happen to us, but rich men attract lawsuits, and I intend to keep you safe. I signed. Love can make you illiterate. The morning after the envelope, I jolted awake to Theo patting my face. Mama, white juice? Yes, baby. I poured milk into the last clean sippy cup in a kitchen that was suddenly complicated. Ella shuffled in, hair tangled, eyes squinty. Is today the talent show? She asked. Yes, baby. I said it again because it comforted me. Yes. I dressed them by muscle memory and counted quarters for the school's Coins for Books fundraiser, realizing as coins clinked into a plastic bag that I didn't know where the card with our grocery points had gone. I had a mansion, 2 children, a garden that looked like the cover of a magazine, and no idea how to buy groceries next week. I called Evan, straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I texted. You left. The kids ask for you. We need to talk. Read receipts off, like always. He controlled visibility even in silence. Then I called the unknown number from the night before. A woman answered with a voice that had the calm of somebody who lives inside a spreadsheet. Ms. Miller? She asked. This is Dana. I represent Mr. Hartley's family office. Her tone suggested I should have recognized the office the way one recognizes a cathedral. I asked her where our money was. She said words like asset protection, trust instruments, discretionary distributions, and what I heard was, "You're on your own, sweetheart." By 9 a.m., I had learned 3 new facts. The house was legally titled in an LLC that wasn't mine. The joint accounts had been swept for liability mitigation, and the postnup included a clause, buried in a thicket of subparagraphs, that voided spousal support if I engaged in conduct prejudicial to the marriage's reputation. Conduct, it seemed, included disagreeing with his PR team. I hadn't disagreed yet, but their preemptive strike told me I wouldn't be allowed to. I drove Ella to school with Theo singing dinosaur names in the back seat, and I felt the awful split of being both a mother and a person under siege. At drop-off, another mom complimented my coat. I smiled and said thanks, and wondered how many weeks it could cover late notices. At home, I dialed legal aid. Busy. I tried again. They put me on a wait list for an intake call 2 weeks out. 2 weeks is 5,000 breakfasts. I called a private attorney recommended by a neighbor. The retainer number she quoted made my throat close. We agreed on a consultation later that week. She'd outline options. Options sounded like a luxury. At noon, the doorbell rang. A man with a clipboard. "You've been served." The petition filed by Evan's attorneys accused me of parental alienation, of financial instability, of emotional volatility. The subtext was chilling. He wanted custody. Not the late night up with fevers kind, the photo op kind, the I'm the hero who stepped in kind. The petition dripped with outrage that I couldn't maintain the lifestyle his press kit promised. In the eyes of a certain court, a mother who runs out of money is negligent. The fact that he took it didn't matter. I could feel the blood leaving my face. I sat on the stairs, the petition trembling in my hands, and thought of my mother, the woman who taught me to be polite but not silent. She would have said, "Grace, don't let them make you small." So I called a friend who owed me nothing and offered everything. Jess, a nurse and single mom, who had learned her own power the hard way. She said 2 words that became a rope I gripped for months. Document everything. Before I go on, if this story is finding you in a grocery line, on a bus, or in a bed where sleep won't come, subscribe so you don't miss the turns this road takes, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your city, your corner, your weather. So this doesn't feel like shouting into a void, because what happened next taught me that the void talks back, and when women answer each other, walls tremble. I started a notebook. Dates, times, texts, receipts. The way the lights flickered a little when the HVAC kicked on. Was that new? I screenshot the bank zeros. I saved the nanny's text. I called the mortgage company and learned we were 30 days from a notice of default, because the responsible party had restructured payments. Responsible. A word that wanted to crawl out of the phone and slap me. That night, I cooked pasta with butter and told the kids we were having a camp-out dinner on the living room floor. We ate off paper plates because the dishwasher had started making a grinding sound I didn't trust. Ella practiced her talent show song, a little Taylor Swift with a lot of heart, and I felt the house soften for the first time in days. After bedtime, I opened the front door packet again and read a line that made my blood go cold. Request for exclusive occupancy of the marital residence. He intended to move back into my life by pushing me and the kids out of it. I pressed my forehead to the glass and watched the lake breathe in the dark. Somewhere out there was a horizon line that didn't depend on him. I just didn't know how to reach it yet. I thought about the unknown number, Dana, and the way she said family office, as if it were a divine right. I thought about a phrase Evan liked to repeat at dinner parties. In this country, structure is everything. I had structure too, just not the kind men write. I had bedtime songs and dinosaur facts and the way a child's hand curls into yours without asking first. That was a structure he couldn't sweep. My phone buzzed again. A new email, subject line, about the school fund. It was from the PTA treasurer, a woman I barely knew. The message was short and strange. "Grace, there's something you should see, but not by email. If you think a petition and an empty account were the edges of the map, you don't know the maze." The first doorway appeared at the school gym the next morning, and what I found inside would turn the custody fight into something bigger, darker, and far more public. Because the paper cuts were only the beginning, and the worst was yet to come. The gym smelled like waxed floors and orange slices. Kids were practicing for the talent show. Rows of folding chairs waited like patient witnesses. The PTA treasurer, a woman named Priya, with kind eyes and a clipped efficiency, took me to a corner near the bleachers and pressed a manila folder into my hands. Inside were printouts, screenshots of a donor portal, pledges, transactions, and a line item with Evan's name in bold. "This came through last night," Priya said softly. The system flagged it. A large donation was pledged to the school's emergency scholarship fund from Evan Hartley Holdings, but when we tried to verify, the account bounced. I stared at the numbers. 6 figures promised. 0 delivered. The note attached to the pledge was worse. A self-congratulatory paragraph about Evan's commitment to at-risk kids and the single mothers who raise them. He'd claimed public virtue with a credit card he'd already canceled. The hypocrisy burned like acid. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Priya exhaled. "Because you're a mother here. Because I don't think you did this to yourself. And because when powerful men try to buy sainthood, they don't expect the receipts to fight back." I took copies, thanked her, and left via the side door. Outside, the Ohio sky was a low lid. Snow threatened even though the calendar promised spring. In the car, I called Jess. "He's laundering his reputation through the PTA," I said, half laughing, because the absurdity needed an escape valve. Jess didn't laugh. "Do not go public yet," she instructed. "Let your attorney see it first. Everything you reveal too early will be used to paint you as hysterical. Quiet first, then loud." My consultation with the attorney, her name was Marisol Alvarez, was in a modest office in a brick building that used to be a bakery. The waiting room had flyers for clinics and support groups, a bowl of lollipops, and a poster about child support enforcement that felt like a dare. Marisol came out in flats and a navy dress. No pretense. She shook my hand like a teammate, asked me to sit, and listened. Really listened. When I finished, she tapped her pen against her notepad and said, "We're going to need 3 things: time, documentation, and allies. Do you have any of the third?" I thought of Priya, of Jess, of my mother in a nursing home 2 hours away, who could still read a person in a glance. "Maybe," I said. "I can find them." Marisol nodded. "Good, because his team will try to frame this as a lifestyle case, not a custody case. They'll argue stability equals wealth. We'll argue stability equals presence. Also," she held up the post-nup, "this clause is unconscionable, but unconscionable isn't the same as unenforceable. We'll need leverage." Leverage. The word crawled under my skin. I thought of the PTA pledge, of messages from Dana, of the courier at 2 a.m. "What about the donation?" I asked. "He pledged money he didn't intend to give, to a fund for kids whose mothers can't pay lunch fees." Marisol's eyes sharpened. "Pattern of image management. If he's moving assets to avoid distribution, we can subpoena records. If he's making public claims that don't match financial reality, we might find inconsistencies big enough to open doors." She paused. "Grace, I need to ask, do you want the money?" No one had asked me that. The honest answer was complicated. I wanted groceries. Yes, heat, shoes that fit. But more than money, I wanted a world where my daughter learned that promise and performance are supposed to match. "I want safety," I said, "for me and the kids. And I want the truth to be louder than his myth." Marisol smiled like a woman who had hauled 1,000 truths uphill. "Then, we make a plan." The plan was unglamorous. It was filing for temporary orders, securing an emergency hearing on occupancy so the kids and I wouldn't be uprooted by his petition, applying for SNAP and YC without throwing up from the shame I'd been taught to feel about needing help. It was calling the utility company and asking for a payment plan, learning the phrase budget billing, and making a spreadsheet that became a mirror I didn't always want to face. It was searching for after-school programs so I could look for work, sitting on a wait list for Head Start we didn't qualify for, and Googling, "How much is childcare in Ohio?" and learning they price it like hope. It was calling my mother, who apologized for not having money, and I told her to stop, please stop, and driving to Toledo on weekends so the kids could cuddle in her thin, lemon-scented sheets while I cried in the hallway and promised them this was temporary. It was making peace with the EBT card at the grocery store and holding my head up when a cashier looked at the mansion on my key fob and then at the total on the screen, and I had to say quietly, "Please take the chips off." It was also meeting with Priya again, confidentially this time, and learning something I didn't expect. The PTA treasurer had worked in corporate compliance before she had kids. She knew how to read money like a language. She pointed to the donor portal and said, "This pledge came from a device that had also accessed 2 other donor accounts within minutes. It's possible someone from his office used them to pump the numbers." She looked at me carefully. "If we can show intentional misrepresentation, it creates narrative, if not legal leverage." Meanwhile, Evan's campaign ramped up. Photos with city council members, a charity breakfast where he spoke about the importance of fathers, an Instagram post of him handing a giant check to a shelter in a neighboring county. I later learned the check was a pledge instrument, not cash. He was moving in the open while trying to trap me in the dark. Dana called again to offer a voluntary custody arrangement where the children would benefit from Mr. Hartley's stability. I asked if stability meant a nanny paid on time and a father who came home before midnight. She said my tone was unproductive. The emergency hearing arrived like weather. We couldn't stop it. We could only show up prepared. Marisol filed declarations. Jess submitted a letter about my parenting, complete with school pickup screenshots. Priya, at personal risk, provided an affidavit noting the pledge irregularities without speculation. I printed every text, every receipt, every late notice with the names blacked out, but the story intact. On the morning of the hearing, I wore the one suit I owned from my marketing days and put my hair in a low bun because I had learned a grim truth: courts adore neat mothers. In a windowless courtroom, a magistrate listened while Evan's attorney framed me as erratic, financially irresponsible, hostile to father-child relationships. Evan sat in a blue suit the color of a rich sky and didn't look at me. When it was our turn, Marisol's voice was steady, unflinching. She said words like coercive control, financial abuse, asset starvation. She handed the magistrate the petition's contradictions and the PTA pledge documents like a trail of breadcrumbs. She asked for exclusive occupancy for me and the children pending trial, and a temporary support order calibrated to the lifestyle Evan broadcasted, and we never got to own. The magistrate frowned at the post-nup clause, called it troubling, granted temporary occupancy to us, and ordered a temporary child support payment far lower than the numbers in glossy magazines, but higher than the nothing we'd had. It was a win measured in breathing room, not money. Outside the courtroom, Evan brushed past me, cologne a knife. He leaned in and murmured for me alone. "You don't know the game you're playing." I looked him in the eye and said, "Then teach me." He smiled without teeth. "I already did." Then he walked away, leaving me with the sense that a move had been made on a board I couldn't see. That afternoon, a notice appeared on the mansion's gate. City inspection scheduled. Anonymous complaint. The inspector came, photographed the hairline crack in the driveway, cited the pool fence, and hinted at fines. Meanwhile, a blogger posted photos of me at the courthouse, face blurred but story intact. Millionaire's wife seeks payout. The comments sliced me thin. That night, I hid in the laundry room with the dryer humming like a lullaby and scrolled in the dark. That's when I found it. A public record site with property filings. I typed Hartley, then Hartley Holdings, then Lakefront Development Partners, LLC, and the screen filled with documents. Among them, a quitclaim deed filed 3 months earlier. To me. My name. A small commercial building in a part of Ohio City that used to be ignored and was now up and coming. No mortgage listed. I thought it was a mistake until I saw the signature. Evan Hartley. With a flourish I would know anywhere. Why would he deed me a building without telling me? Why hide the safety net and then cut every other rope? Unless my skin went cold. Unless the building wasn't a net at all. There was only one way to find out. The next morning, with Theo's dinosaur backpack and Ella's lunch in the car, I drove to the address and parked across the street. The building was brick and tired, the kind of place you walk by without looking twice. A faded awning, granite cleaners. In the window, a handwritten sign, cash only. My name was on a deed, but I'd never stepped inside. My hand shook as I reached for the door. It stuck, then gave with a scrape. A bell jingled. A woman behind the counter looked up, eyes wary. "We're not open yet." "I'm Grace," I said, voice too bright. I swallowed. "I think I own this building." Her mouth flattened. She gestured toward the back. "If you own it, then you should probably see the basement." And that's how I learned what Evan had really taught me, how to descend. Because under that tired brick, under the hum of old machines, lay a discovery that would force me to make a choice that could cost me everything, even the very thing I thought I was fighting for. And if you think the maze was cruel before, wait until you see the trap inside. The worst was yet to come. The woman's name was Rita, and she led me down a narrow staircase that smelled like rust and damp. She moved with the tired efficiency of someone who has spent years knowing more than she's allowed to say. At the bottom, fluorescent lights flickered and steadied, revealing a low-ceilinged room that had 2 lives. One as a storage space for cracked plastic bins, the other as a makeshift office, a dented metal desk, a folding chair, a safe that looked older than the building. Rita pointed to the safe. "He said to keep everything secure until someone came by," she said. No one came by. Then the rent checks stopped arriving. She glanced at me. 2 months now. She handed me a key, attached to a tag with my name in a careful script. My pulse thudded in my throat. "You've seen what's inside?" I asked. She shook her head. "He told me not to." The key stuck, turned, and the safe door groaned open. Inside, a leather ledger, a stack of prepaid phones still in plastic, a small external hard drive, and a folder labeled Maintenance that contained exactly one thing: a photograph of Evan shaking hands with a man I recognized from the news. A contractor indicted for kickbacks last year. Behind them, a banner. Hartley Homes Community Day. I opened the ledger. Names, dates, numbers, arrows. Payments in, payments out. Some entries referred to donations, others to retainers, a few to scholarships. The amounts didn't align with the dates on the donor portal at school. In the margin, a notation in Evan's handwriting. Consolidate and spin. I cracked the prepaid phones out of their plastic, hands trembling, and powered one up. No SIM, no service, but the photo gallery had images, screenshots of bank balances, receipts from a coffee shop near City Hall, and a photo of a whiteboard with a sketch of the custody timeline, our custody timeline, accompanied by a list of pressure points, utilities, PR, inspection, PTA. He had written my life like a project plan. Rita watched my face. Is this bad? She asked. Or good? It's evidence, I said. The word tasted dangerous. Evidence can save you or burn you, depending on who lights the match. Back upstairs, Rita poured coffee in a chipped mug and told me her story. Evan had bought the building 2 years ago, right before the neighborhood turned. He'd offered her a sweetheart lease to keep her dry cleaning business alive, then assigned the property to a new LLC with my name tucked inside like a hidden seed. He never came by himself. A man named Tobin handled collections, repairs, messages scrawled on yellow pads. But, she added, about 6 months ago a woman stopped by, not like the others. She asked questions, said she worked for a foundation. I didn't believe her. What did she look like? I asked. Rita described Dana. The family office had footprints, after all. I stepped onto the sidewalk and dialed Marisol, voice low. I'm at the building. There's a ledger, a lot more. It's a map of him. She didn't tell me to leave it. She didn't tell me to bring it. She said, photograph every page. Bring the hard drive. Do not remove the ledger yet. If he set this up as a trap, we need to spring it carefully. Trap. The word was a wire pulled taut. I looked at the awning, at the faded letters, at the quiet street that held more secrets than traffic. Why deed me the building? He could claim that I managed it, that the ledger was mine, that the donations were my bookkeeping. He had made me the owner of record, and then scattered breadcrumbs to lead any investigator right here. If he ever faced consequences, he could say, my wife handled that location. She's unstable. I pressed my palm to the brick. He's laundering both money and blame. I said to no one. My phone buzzed. A text from Dana. We understand you have engaged counsel. We urge you to consider the children's best interests and avoid actions that could escalate matters. Escalate. As if I were the grenade. I drove home. Every red light a memory. Our first holiday. Ella's first steps. The time Evan said, don't worry your pretty head. And I laughed because I thought he was joking. Marisol met me at her office after hours. We spread the photos across her desk. She whistled low. He's sloppy, she said. To men like this, sloppiness isn't a flaw. It's confidence. They believe no one will look closely. She plugged in the hard drive with a write blocker, clicked through folders, and then stopped. On the screen, a folder labeled Community Partners. Inside, PDFs of pledge forms, internal memos about timing good news, drops to offset unfavorable proceedings, and a draft op-ed for Evan to submit to the plain dealer about resilient fatherhood. There was also an email chain between Dana and Tobin about transfers ahead of temporary orders, the very phrase a judge might like to hear out loud. The dates matched the night of the envelope and the ghostly text on my phone at 2:14 a.m. Marisol leaned back. We have leverage, she said, but we also have a risk. If he claims you ran this property, he can drag you into a different kind of fight. What do I do? I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. We tell the truth, we control the timing, and we involve the right witnesses. The next days were a choreography of risk. Priya connected us with a journalist at a local station known for digging into corruption, a woman named Sloan, who'd made half the city nervous with a smile. But we didn't go to her yet. First, Marisol filed a motion to compel financial disclosures, attaching selected exhibits, the pledge timing, the internal memo about good news drops, the email chain about transfers. Not everything. Enough to signal we weren't drowning. He responded by turning up the heat. A concerned neighbor reported me to CPS for neglect, citing kids playing near an unfenced pool. The pool was fenced. CPS came anyway, kind but firm. They interviewed Ella and Theo with sunbeams on the rug, and patience I will be grateful for until I die. The case closed as unfounded, but the message was clear. He would use any system as a weapon, even the ones meant to protect our children. That night, I sat at the kitchen table after the kids were asleep and opened the ledger photos again. A name kept repeating, Lakefront Impact Collective. It sounded like philanthropy. A quick public search showed glossy pictures, mission statements about equity, a board full of believers, and a list of partners that included the PTA fund, except the number next to the PTA didn't match the ledger. The ledger listed an amount thrice as high as the pledge. Where did the difference go? I thought of Rita's safe, of the prepaid phones, of the whiteboard photo with my life diagram next to pressure points. He hadn't just abandoned me. He'd drafted an architecture of my failure and installed me as the face of it. If I stayed quiet, I'd drown. If I yelled too soon, he'd call me hysterical. If I yelled well, if I showed the house how the wiring worked, the lights might come on. The choice arrived, black and white, the next morning, when the journalist Sloane called Priya. I have reason to believe the Hartley narrative is incomplete, her message said. If someone wants to talk, my door is open. Marisol warned me. Once you go public, you can't go back. But going public can also protect you. He thrives in quiet rooms. So I made a decision that felt like jumping off a building I now apparently owned. I would meet Sloane, with documents, with care, with a plan, and I would tell a truth no one could Photoshop. Not the tale of a vindictive ex-wife, but the map of a man who built structures to hide his hollow places. On the day we met, I wore jeans and a sweater that made me look like the mom I am. We sat in a booth at a diner that smelled like coffee and second chances. I handed over copies, the memo, the pledge discrepancy, the email chain. I didn't give her the ledger. Not yet. Her eyes sharpened the way Marisol's had. He's been moving money while crafting a saint story, she said. Classic. She looked at me. You know this will blow up? I'm counting on it, I said. And I'm bracing for the shrapnel. We agreed on timing. She'd file records requests. We'd file our motions. And when the story ran, it would focus on public facts, not divorce gossip. Sloane was good. She understood where truth ends and harm begins. The night before the story aired, I tucked Ella in and she asked very quietly, Mom, is Dad mad at us? Children don't ask about money. They ask about love. I told her the truth children need. He's making some hurtful choices, but there are so many grown-ups helping us. She nodded, satisfied for now, and rolled over with her book like a shield. At 6:02 a.m. the next morning, the segment aired. The headline was precise. Questions surround philanthropic claims by local developer. It featured public documents, the pledge discrepancies, the internal good news memo we'd authenticated, and a city council member, bless him, who went on record saying, if donors are gaming public goodwill, we should know. They didn't name me. They didn't need to. Evan's PR machine roared to life anyway, calling the story politically motivated. The family office issued a statement about clerical errors and vast philanthropy underreported out of humility. Humility. I laughed so hard I cried. By noon, the court clerk emailed new filings from Evan's side, an attempt to seal our financial case. By 2, Sloane called. We have another source, a former employee from his office. He says there's a second ledger. I felt the ground breathe. A second ledger meant corroboration. It also meant escalation. Sloane wouldn't say the name. Protecting sources is how she sleeps. But she said this. He thinks the dry cleaner building was designed as a distraction. He says the real funnel runs through a foundation partner, Lakefront Impact Collective. The name thrummed in my head like a pulse. If the building was a decoy, what was I holding? Bait? A bluff? Or the exact piece needed to unlock the vault? There was only one way to know. We had to light the match, carefully, publicly, in a courtroom with rules. Marisol filed an emergency motion with exhibits that formed a simple, devastating sentence. He is hiding money while claiming saintliness and starving his children. We didn't say it with fire. We said it with math. We asked the court to appoint a forensic accountant and to order temporary support at a level that reflected his actual means, not his performative poverty. The hearing date landed like thunder. The night before, Ella's pencil broke during homework, and she burst into tears. I held her and felt the truth of our life in my arms. Small crises inside big ones. I was terrified, but I was also something else I hadn't expected. Ready. I didn't know that as I braided Ella's hair for court the next morning, a woman wearing sensible shoes and carrying a box of files would be stepping into the same courthouse from the other side of the city with a decision to make that would change everything. I didn't know she had once worked for Dana, that she had printed emails against her better judgment, that she had circled my name in a draft memo and written collateral. I didn't know that not all systems are made of gears. Some are made of people who decide they've had enough. I only knew this. The fight had finally reached a room with walls and rules, and we were bringing the light. But if you think the truth set us free right away, you don't know how darkness fights back. The worst was yet to come. Courtrooms don't look like justice. They look like waiting. We waited while lawyers whispered and keyboards clicked and the HVAC hissed. The magistrate entered, and the air changed. Marisol stood. She laid out the math. Sloane's story had cracked the shell. The forensic accountant's preliminary report pried it open. Transfers to affiliated entities. Donor pledges inflated relative to actual disbursements. Timing that aligned too neatly with our filings. Then came the part I didn't expect. A letter from a whistleblower, submitted under seal but summarized for the record, stating that the Lakefront Impact Collective coordinated with Hartley Holdings to stage philanthropic announcements to influence family court perceptions. The magistrate's face didn't move, but the room did. Evan's attorney objected again, and objected a third time for good measure. The magistrate overruled, then granted our motion for a thorough financial examination, and issued a temporary order for child support that made my shoulders drop for the first time in months. Not wealth, not revenge, breathing. She also warned both parties that any interference with the mother's occupancy or any intimidation via ancillary systems will be viewed dimly by this court. It was as close to a scolding as the robe allowed. Outside, the air felt like new drywall, raw, changeable. Evan didn't look at me. He walked to a separate elevator, cocooned by suits. I watched him retreat and felt nothing triumphant, only a sober recognition. He would keep fighting, but so would I, now with allies who knew how to hold a line. Over the next weeks, the story widened. The collective issued statements. Donors demanded audits. A city council committee scheduled a hearing. Dana resigned to spend more time with family. The PTA Scholarship Fund, embarrassed and angry, received anonymous donations that made up the shortfall, and then some. Proof that when people see the wiring, some will pick up a hammer and help rebuild. Rita's lease was reinstated under my terms. Fair rent, timely repairs, no more yellow pad messages from men who arrive without names. I brought a locksmith to the building and changed the locks, holding the new keys like a sacrament. At home, life became ordinary in the way survival is ordinary. We ate spaghetti and celebrated small things. Ella's chorus solo, Theo spelling pteranodon with fierce concentration. I found a part-time job with a nonprofit that helps families navigate housing tangles. Apparently, surviving a maze makes you good at drawing maps. I learned to decode paperwork that once felt like a foreign language, and I kept my ledger, a bright, clean one with no shadows, to track the tiny empire of our days. Groceries, bus passes, shoe sizes, library fines, kindnesses received, kindnesses returned, and then, the twist I didn't see coming, a letter from Evan's mother, handwritten, shaky, addressed not to Mrs. Hartley but to Grace. Inside, a photograph of Evan at 6, gap-toothed, holding a cardboard sword. A note that said, "I raised a boy who thought winning meant never being small. I'm sorry for the ache he brought into your house. I'm sending this because I hope he can still learn to lay the sword down." Enclosed was a cashier's check, one I couldn't cash for legal reasons, one I didn't need as much anymore, one I photographed and returned with a letter of my own. "Thank you for seeing us. We're okay." The custody case didn't end with a gavel shot and credits. It resolved the way real life does, slowly, in stipulations and status conferences, in therapy appointments for children whose hearts deserve better, in a parenting plan that the court enforces like a fence we all have to respect. He pays support now, because the court says he must, because the story got bright enough that hiding lost its joy. But the real victory isn't in the checks. It's in the morning light on my children's faces, as they eat pancakes in a kitchen we can afford, in a house that isn't a museum, but a home where the loudest kind of quiet is the good kind. Peace. If you've walked with me this far, you know the conspiracy wasn't about politics or shadowy cabals. It was the oldest one, the myth that wealth is virtue, that quiet women are safe, that motherhood without money is negligence instead of heroism. Here is what I learned in the ruins. We are not the sum of what he withholds. We are the sum of what we refuse to surrender. Our children's steadiness, our dignity, our right to be seen. I still keep the ring in my robe pocket, the one from that last night. Not as a wound, but as a weight. A reminder that paper can cut, but it can also be folded into something useful. A plane, a map, a note to the next woman that says, "You are not crazy for seeing what you see." If my story found you tonight, if you're counting coins in a parking lot or staring at a stack of papers with words that bruise, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapters. Because I promise to keep telling the truth until the quiet in your house is the good kind too. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your street, your city, your sky. So this circle gets wider, so no one has to whisper alone. Because in the end, when the mansion went silent, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of my children learning that promises should match performance, that love shows up with receipts, that mothers are made of steel disguised as lullabies. The maze didn't beat me. I mapped it, marked the exits, and left the lights on for whoever comes next. And if you think this is where the story stops, you're wrong, because the worst wasn't the enemy. The worst was the teacher, and the best, what we keep, what we build, what we sing together, starts right now.